On December 11th, Exo Speaks YouTube made a video called Black Creators Are Selling Off Reviews, where he talks about how black creators who built entire online platforms by tearing down other black people, points out how under the guise of accountability and guidance, in reality are manipulating people while also spouting harmful, untrue rhetoric, and relying on generalizations. And it's pretty effed up from what these people are saying. We've got can't believe she wasn't fired from the Daily Wire, black women who make fun of the fact that someone got their EBT taken and claims that anyone who has EBT and just so happens to be black should have their benefits taken away because there's this misguided belief that black people use EBT the most. According to USDA data, white people are the largest racial group receiving SNAP benefits at 35.4%, with African Americans at 25.7%, and Hispanic people at 15.6%. So yes, our fellow American males are actually number one at something other than the cause of gun deaths and violence. Not me. I couldn't even shoot a Beyblade into a stadium without my fingers hurting. Seriously, we need more comfortable shooters. Then you have Key and Peele watcher who thought the Black Republican skit was a call to action, telling people of his own skin color not to name their children African adjacent names because they wouldn't get a job. And look, I get it. There are weird names of every ethnicity out there, but like, who cares? If you're one of the most qualified and hardworking people and your employer only has a criticism towards your name, that's their loss. Guys, I'm not Asian, but I had an Asian roommate who had a 2-syllable name. I get that our society is ridiculously rigid and stupid in terms of accepting people and names to the point where I've heard minorities have to change their names to make them more American so that they can get a job. But like, 2 syllables cannot be that hard to say. Chiyun, Gojo, Endo, Yuto. Anime fans do it all the time. It's legitimately not that hard. Then you all probably remember last year I made a short about the Jubilee video with Mehdi Hassan about the guy who had a discussion who admitted to being a fascist. He wrote a statement about how after being in the latest episode he was released from his job and started a Go Sengo while looking for a new job, claiming it was because he held legal traditional right-wing political views, claiming it was cancel culture and political discrimination. Since I checked, the campaign got unpublished, but considering this is the same guy who got tens of thousands of dollars from donors who were saying Europeans and Americans need to cast out the brown plague by any means necessary, and thank you for standing up to malicious brown invaders. Yeah, I don't know who's worse, but people allegedly found that he lied about the situation. In reality, he wasn't fired from the debate, but he was fired in January before he even had the debate. So basically, he lied and used the situation in order to get money from people, or, to grift people into giving him money. And the funny thing is, people besides me realized that he didn't even mention who the employer was who fired him over the Jubilee appearance. And this was originally going to be the end of this, but people found out the tweet where he confirmed that he lost his job around January from this tweet on January 22nd, 2025, where he says, "If you all could pray for me, I would greatly appreciate it. I got laid off from my job." Even if you argue the Jubilee video was made a few months before it happened in July, how could his employers be able to, think about it, how could his employers be able to access the footage and recording months in advance? See what I mean? Even if you agree with the guy, he lied in order to make you feel more sympathetic for him, took your money, and look, I empathize with losing your job. We have to do anything to get what we need in life, but there's an ethical way to do so that isn't relying on misinformation. The other video that inspired this was Studio Pillboy's video titled The Price of Self-Respect, where he talks about how black people who intentionally performs and promotes harmful stereotypes about their own community does so not out of ignorance or passivity, but as a deliberate act to gain approval, protection, and profits from white audiences and institutions, especially when some of them are performative. And as a white audience member, we should expect better. Pillboy talked about the two kinds of people who do this in racial groups, the gesture and the knight, and we can tell what these two are. The gesture plays upon the minstrel joke, well, at least in black communities, because there are the groups, we'll talk about that later, who acts and performs exaggerated stereotypes, such as the black guy who does nothing but eats fried chicken, watermelon, and isn't intelligent, oddly dangerous towards white women, despite the fact that slave owners would treat their black female slaves as unwilling tools for their adulterer, and the blackface jokes. People have called out the black best friend trope because their characters tend to be there for laughs or humor with no plot lines and characterizations beyond their own, or even good character focus. And as we saw with Sokka from Avatar: The Last Airbender, you can be the funny guy and still have a lot of depth and development towards your character. And people accuse those like Kai Cenat for falling into this trope, like how we had a white friend of his say the N-word on stream. And also, eating watermelon shouldn't be an excuse to make fun of black people. That's dumb. Ash from Pokemon is Asian, and he used watermelon to teach Trico how to use bullet seed. And watermelon is just a damn good fruit in general. The knight is more seen as dangerous than the other two, and I agree as the enforcer who practices the idea that everyone of that race is the problem. One of those ranges from black slaves that would be the top enforcer, and you see this in slave films like Nightjawn. That movie was about the girl who learned from another slave of the title's name about how to read and write. Written by the same guy who wrote Tracker? Gary Paulson? Man, that is not a name I have heard in quite some time. Anyway, in that film, there's a scene where a head slave leads the others, but the slave owner eventually makes him pick the field. I tend to get long-winded, but the point is that they support something even as continuing to harm the group or any sort of race mentally. And when it comes to black people, the difference is in that movie, the top slave didn't have a choice. But in the modern age, we see the grifters of black people who use their freedom to defend subjugation. For example, Candace Owens defended the deaths of George Floyd by being killed by over-policing, and then Ahmaud Arbery's murder for the crime of jogging. And look what happened to Candace Owens. She was involved in a discrimination lawsuit in Stanford High School when she was younger. Then she got involved in commentary regarding the fact that she doesn't condemn the actual racism. That goes to the point she got hit with a defamation suit for the claims that she made about the French president's wife. She even got kicked out of The Daily Show to the point where they hired initially to be the black woman named Mr. Burcham, only for her to be replaced by another black conservative woman. At this rate, you don't even blame the night, because the real problem with sellouts and grifters are the pawns who listen to them. Yeah, I said it, the pawns, aka their audience. Grifters and sellouts do well because people keep buying and seeking their content instead of seeing the warning signs that they're getting bullshitted and being decepted. And the audience has gotten so powerful that even if someone is objectively wrong, since they're pawns that fed into the narrative, they're now able to protect their kings. And if you aren't aware of it in time, the pawns start infecting your side of the board. And this isn't exclusive to one people of one race. When the Stop Asian Hate movement responded to a bunch of rising hate crimes against Asian Americans, who was to blame? Well, the suspects. A white man in San Francisco attacked 2 Asian elderly people in America, and one of them beat the crap out of her attacker. A man was arrested for shoving a woman outside of a bakery in Queens, New York, named Patrick Mateo, who we can assume is either white passing or Italian based on the name, and people assumed he was black in the comments. An Asian couple at San Ramon In-N-Out was dealing with a racist, homophobic rant threatening to spit on them for the crime of eating dinner and making a food review on TikTok. And that person, Jordan Douglas, was arrested. And 8 women were shot and killed at 3 massage parlors in Atlanta. But if you listen to Lauren Chen, who's Asian and uses that excuse to lie and claim that most of the attackers in these cases have actually been black, or that the counter movement of Stop Asian Hate is encouraging more discriminations against Asians, you know how that statement, a broken clock is right twice a day? Yeah, there have been black people who have attacked Asian people. The Philadelphia subway attack at 4 local high school students attacks Asian high school students, and they got rightfully arrested. And yet I can find white high school girls beating up an Asian girl, a black girl rushing to after school to get revenge for her, and rumors that that black girl got suspended as a result of beating up a racist. But that's the point. We literally had a president literally insult and make fun of Asian people, blaming them for the pandemic as if an entire ethnic group was a Resident Evil antagonist, despite that being ultimately bullshit when you think about it for more than a few minutes. And telling Asian people to stop protesting or complaining about discrimination, only to blame that discrimination on an entire group, is even dumber. And the worst part is, she and her husband were exposed on being brought by a Russian propaganda campaign while supporting white supremacists. And that indictment resulted in the Blaze, Turning Point, and YouTube terminating Lauren Chen and her videos, and almost a decade of work gone. And her new channel is barely 1,000 followers more than mine. Latinos for Trump leader Hector Luis Valdez Chocho, a Cuban activist who rallied others to vote for Trump, was picked by ICE and is in the detention center waiting to be deported. What's the saying again? Oh yeah, tokens always get spent. And going on to the media side, since that's what you've all been following me for, remember when a different content creator told my Beyblade fans that the characters in X are as memorable as trash in a trash can, nothing burgers and devoid of any depth, and yet say they were as wide as an ocean yet deep as a puddle, but didn't bring up a single character besides Bert to talk about? And if we're talking about the Beyblade generation with characters like Shigeru, Chrome, Multi, Tenka, Shieru, Omega, 5, Pakun, and Yoko, all of whom I talked about in further detail about what makes them interesting. And yes, I did see you guys fight back against the obvious misinformation, but I was still enough to net this person 2,000.2 views. And y'all need to see people trying to grift you, since it's obvious they don't care about what they're talking about. And this isn't even the first time people have done this. Remember when the Mario movie came out and people started saying that they included woke pride flag nonsense? You know, Rainbow Road, and how people were mad against Princess Peach was wearing pants in the Mario movie, even though it's identical to the Mario Kart Wii and 8 biker outfit she wears. And there was literally a scene in the movie where they play Mario Kart. The moment that everyone saw that and people started making fun of it like one topic, a bunch of others started realizing that, yeah, these people are literally just outrage merchants that want to be angry and make money off other people believing them. Remember when Ironheart dropped and some loudmouth dudes were saying that Iron Man would never approve of Riri killing, despite the fact that Tony killed people in his first MCU movie? The reason why the war, or at least rise in people exposing grifters and calling out sellouts, is that we're in the age where the worst possible people are getting away with their crimes, and we were raised to believe in justice, the law, and the dangers of lying. And people are tired and fed up of misinformation and false narratives that are either meant to hurt people or platform and profit people whose only goal is to spread division underneath them while they rise to the top of all that controversy. They are kings, knights, gestures, and pawns, and the only way to beat the player is to take a seat at the table and beat them with our own pieces. Facts, logic, counter-arguments, exposing and revealing their lies, and set by set, we'll vanquish these knights. If you made it this far, type Griftbusters and BIP of Bizarre Interest Productions, signing off.